Yeah, good afternoon, everybody.
All right, hello.
My name is Peter Imam from Stormwater Engineering Division, formerly known as Water Resources Division. I have some other staff of Water Resources Division, Stormwater Engineering with me here. So our presentation today will provide an overview of LA County hydrology methods. We also discuss, show you the software we use, hydrology section used to perform hydrologic analysis for small and large watershed. Namely, we use the WMS watershed modeling system and our ever popular HydroCalc. So our presenters today will be Wei, Tang, and Silvia Medina. So please, we ask that you please save and ask your questions at the end of the presentation. So we will have time to cover everything. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As Peter said, me and Silvia are the two presenters today to give you an introduction to hydrology. So by the end of today's presentation, we hope that you will have an understanding of the basic hydrologic concepts and terms, factors affecting hydrology, and learn procedures used to perform hydrology studies. In today's agenda, I will cover the hydrology theory, which includes the definition of hydrology, hydrologic cycle, watershed hydrology, and hydrologic methods available. And also, I will briefly talk about the policy on levels of flood protection. Silvia will go over the two runoff computation methods that we use, and they are the HydroCalc and WMS, the watershed modeling system. As Peter said, during the presentation, if you have any questions, we ask that you hold on to your questions until the end of the presentation. So let's begin. The definition of hydrology. Hydrology is the study of science in response to the need to understand the complex hydrologic cycle of the Earth. The hydrologic cycle is the continuous exchange of water between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere. There are 5 basic components in the hydrologic cycle. They are the condensation, precipitation, infiltration, runoff, and evapotranspiration. Precipitation and surface runoff are the 2 components in the hydrologic cycle that we concern when we perform our hydrology study for a watershed. And a watershed is defined as an area which collects all the runoff from a particular area, directs to a low point such as streams, river, and ocean. And we all live in a watershed. Therefore, a rainfall runoff and rainfall runoff relationship in a watershed is essential in engineering hydrology and planning and managing water resources. There are various factors influence the amount of runoff leaving a watershed. These factors can be caused by physical characteristics of watershed and temporal and spatial characteristics of rainfall. The physical characteristics include land use, soil types, size and shape of a drainage basin, elevation, slope, and topography. Rainfall characteristics include rainfall intensity, rainfall amount, rainfall duration, and rainfall distribution. There are different hydrologic methods to perform hydrology studies and to calculate surface runoff flow rates. The most commonly used in the county are the rational method and the modified rational method. In the rational method, the surface flow rate is calculated by Q equals to CIA. Q is the peak flow rate, C is the runoff coefficient, I is the rainfall intensity, and A is the drainage area. However, there are limitations when we use the rational method. because this method assumes the rainfall intensity is constant at all time throughout the storm. Only peak flow rate is calculated, so it doesn't create a hydrograph. Results are unreliable for areas greater than 200 acres. For public works, the only hydrologic method we use is the modified rational method. We call it the MARAD. MARAD is an extension of the traditional rational method. Even though MARAD uses the same equation, Q equals to CIA, to calculate the flow rate, but MARAD takes into account that rainfall intensity is not constant. It changes with time and location. In the equation, Q is the flow rate at a given duration. I is the rainfall intensity at a duration equals to time of concentration. C is the runoff coefficient at a given point in time, and A is the drainage area. So in MARAD, the first thing we wanted to look at is called the time of concentration. We have to calculate the time of concentration in order for us to determine the rainfall intensity in MARAD. So what is time of concentration? Time of concentration is the time required for the runoff to become established and flows from the most remote point of a drainage basin to the drainage outlet. A regression equation was developed to calculate this time of concentration, TC. And in the equation, the time of concentration, TC, is the function of the longest flow path length and the slope of this flow path, rainfall intensity, and runoff coefficient. The value of the flow path length and slope can be obtained from the physical properties of the drainage area. The runoff coefficient C and the rainfall intensity I are the two parameters I wanted to show how they can be calculated. So let's take a look at the first parameter in the TC equation, rainfall intensity IT. A normalized intensity equation was developed to calculate this rainfall intensity IT. The equation was developed based on a discovery through a study of rain gauge data. The study discovered a normalized relationship for all rainfall intensities within the county. And in the intensity equation, the T here is equals to duration. And I1440 is the 24-hour average rainfall intensity. So to calculate the 24-hour average rainfall intensity, we have to first find out what is the 24-hour rainfall depth. The values for the 24-hour rainfall depth can be obtained from the isohydro maps developed for LA County. Isohydro maps are just contour maps of rainfall. And these maps show the 24-hour rainfall depth expected for the 50-year storm frequency. And these isohydro maps can be found in the Appendix B of the 2006 Hydrology Manual. Since the isohydro maps only show the 50-year 24-hour rainfall depth, the rainfall depth frequency factors were developed to relate other frequencies such as the 25-year, 10-year, 5-year, etc. as factors to the 50-year frequency rainfall depth. So after we calculate the average 24-hour rainfall intensity, then we can go back to calculate the rainfall intensity IT that I just talked about earlier. So let's move on to talk about the second parameter in the TC equation, runoff coefficient CD. Runoff coefficient is a dimensionless coefficient relating the amount of runoff to the amount of rainfall received. CD is a runoff coefficient of a developed or partially developed area. It takes into consideration the effect of development in relation to a runoff coefficient of an undeveloped area and the amount of impervious area. In the equation, IMP is the percent impervious, and the imperviousness is based on land use types. Percent impervious values have been developed for each of the land use type in the county based on the Southern California Association of Governments SCAG data. And also wanted to point it out to you in the first part of this intensity coefficient equation, the 0.9 multiplier for the impervious area is an adjustment take into account that no development is completely impervious. For example, if we have a concrete channel area that has the IMP value of 1, so you plug in that 1 into the equation, you will get the maximum runoff coefficient of 0.9. And another parameter in this coefficient equation, CU, is a runoff coefficient of an undeveloped area. It is dependent upon the soil types and rainfall intensity. LA County has identified 179 soil types. Runoff coefficient curves correspond to each of the 179 soil types were developed based on the physical properties measured in the soil. And these runoff coefficient curves represent the natural soil condition in different areas of the county. And the runoff coefficient curves can be found in Appendix C of the 2006 Hydrology Manual. And this is an example of the runoff coefficient curve for soil type 68. So with the rainfall intensity we calculated earlier, in this case is the rainfall intensity IT, we can come to this curve to find the corresponding undeveloped runoff coefficient CU. And with the undeveloped runoff coefficient CU, then you can calculate the developed coefficient CD. And with the CD and IT, then you can go back to calculate the time of concentration TC. So after the time of concentration TC is calculated, then we can come back to the Marrat equation to look at the rainfall intensity I. In order to determine the rainfall intensity, we have to use a design storm rainfall mass curve. Rainfall mass curve is a graph of accumulated rainfall versus time. It represents rainfall occur over time. So the rainfall intensity I is the slope of this curve over a period of time, TC, which we calculated earlier. So with the different rainfall intensities I determined from this curve, we can find the corresponding developed runoff coefficient CD. So with the different rainfall intensity I's and runoff coefficient CD, then now we can generate the different surface flow rate Q's at every ordinate of this hydrograph. A hydrograph is a graph of flow versus time. So to recap what I just said, so the Marrat uses the traditional rational equation Q equals to CIA combined with a rainfall mass curve to generate different surface flow rates Q at different times throughout the storm, which results in a hydrograph here. And then from the hydrograph, then we can calculate the runoff volume. So in conclusion, Marrat is an extension of the traditional rational method. It takes into account the changes in rainfall intensities and runoff coefficient to produce a hydrograph. And then this hydrograph allows us to calculate the runoff volume. And also another advantage of the Marrat is it allows for flow routings at every contributing drainage area from upstream to downstream using different conveyance types. So this concludes my hydrology theory. Now I wanted to move on to briefly talk about the policy on levels of flood protection. Public Works established the policy on levels of flood protection. It describes which design storm to use on certain conditions and structures. For capital flood protection, 50-year design storm is used, and it applies to facilities including natural water courses, county floodway, open channels, culverts, and bridges, natural depressions, and sumps for depth greater than 3 feet. And the urban flood protection 25-year storm event is used. It applies to all facilities in developed area that are not covered under the capital flood protection conditions. The 10-year frequency design storm is used for storm drain designs in the urban watersheds. And lastly, the 85th percentile storm is used for all stormwater projects, such as the BMP projects, the best management practices projects, and the LID projects, the low impact development projects. Now I want to turn the presentation to Silvia to talk about the two runoff computation methods the county use.
As Wei mentioned, here in the county we have two runoff computation methods, HydroCalc and WMS. HydroCalc was created by Stormwater Engineering Hydrology section back in 2014, and WMS is a proprietary software application from Aquaveo used to calculate watershed modeling, computer simulations. And it was created back in the early 1990s at the Engineering Computer Graphics Lab of Brigham Young University before spinning off into private company in 2007. Now let me talk about HydroCalc first. HydroCalc, the hydrology calculator, can perform a full mode calculation. It's useful for areas of 40 acres or less. Does not perform routing of flows, and the parameters need to be inputted into the model. It's free, can be downloaded from our WRD website, and it's very easy to use. The hydrologic calculator can be used to calculate the time of concentration, the PQ, the volume, and a hydrograph for a single subarea and for multiple subareas as well. As I said before, HydroCalc the parameters need to be predetermined, and these parameters can be obtained from two different sources, WRD, hydrology. We can obtain the land use, the soils type, and the rainfall depth, and from our 2006 hydrology manual appendices, we can obtain the rainfall depth, the land use, and the soil type. For a single subarea, as I mentioned before, HydroCalc can do calculations for single subarea and multiple subareas. Now let me talk about the single subarea. The parameters that we need to calculate the area, the flow path length, the flow path slope, and this can be calculated using ArcMap, MicroStation, or AutoCAD, or any other program that is capable of doing this type of calculations. The soil type, the rainfall depth, and the land use can be obtained from the two sources that I just mentioned before, WRD website and from the 2006 hydrology manual. The design storm and the fire factor can be chosen from the scroll down buttons, and the fire factor is mostly used for undeveloped watersheds. However, for the multiple subareas, we need a CSV file. Comma-separated values needs to be generated in Excel spreadsheet and imported into HydroCalc. One important fact that I would like to mention, the table of contents under the multi-subarea tab, it's view only. If there's any edits that needs to be made, we need to go back to the CSV file, make the changes, save the file, and re-import it back into HydroCalc. Another important fact is that HydroCalc does not perform routing of flows. The multi-subarea is just as a group of single subarea runs. The output files for a single subarea and multiple subarea are the same as have the same format. It's as a PDF file, as a CSV file. However, the CSV file, the output CSV file generated by HydroCalc cannot be re-imported back into the model. The input and the output CSV files are different. it will contain, the output files will contain the PQ, the volumes, the hydrograph, and the time of concentration. Now let me talk about watershed modeling. Hydrology studies require the use of mathematical models. A model is a simple representation of a natural system. WMS is used primarily to set up and run a hydrologic model. Using the graphical interface of Los Angeles County Department of Public Works, MODRAT, the Modified Rational Method. Now I'm going to talk to you about the necessary steps in order to perform a hydrology study. This includes office and field preparation, delineation of the watershed boundary and break up the watershed into sub-basins of 40 acres or less, input the WMS parameters, define the sub-area numbering, define and compute the TC, and run the model and calculate the PQ. GIS is a very important program that we use in today's hydrology studies. It helps us to determine, to collect data accurately and quickly. And this includes aerial images, parcel maps, flood control systems, contours, and digital elevations, DEMs. For a field check, maps are created using ArcGIS, using the parcel maps, the storm drains, the storm drain alignments, the location of catch basin. We use aerial images as well to give us a better understanding of what it's out in the field. The purpose of the field check is to verify the drainage pattern and the drainage systems. After all this information is gathered, now we are ready to do our delineation. The map that you see here on the screen is a representation of a field check, of our field check map, and the arrows that you see is the drainage pattern. So this will help us to delineate the watershed and to locate the collection points and the streams. Now that we are ready to delineate our watershed, we need to input some parameters into WMS. And this will be the land use, the soils type, the rainfall depth, and the DEMs in order to have a working model. WMS will assign a default name to each basin and collection point and reach. However, these numbers and names has to be in order. In order for from upstream to downstream, in order for WMS to do a proper calculation. Now the last thing that we need to, the last parameter that we need to define is the time of the TC path, which is represented as the blue line that you see here on the screen. We draw the lines from the most remote point of the subwatershed and to the collection point of each of them. And now we are ready to run our model. We have calculated the area, we have calculated the TC, we have the soils type, the percent of impervious, the rainfall depth, but we are not quite done yet. Wei mentioned that WMS allow for routing of flows. So this is the time to do to choose the routing type, which could be street, channel, valley, mountain, or street. Most of the parameters required for WMS for the model to run are ready. However, there's two parameters that controls the global that controls the global the overall simulation, and these are the time period and the frequency. And then we are ready to run our model. After the model, WMS has finished running the simulation, a hydrograph plot will be right next to each basin, ridge, and routing and collection point. And the output file will be as a text file, and this will include the Severia Q, the total Q, and the total volume. And lastly, what you see here is the final report that we provide to other divisions. We use ArcGIS to generate this type of maps using locating the watershed, breakups, the collection points, the stream, and the total Q. We provide the total Q, the volume, and the volume for each of the for the outlet. In summary, Hydrocalc can perform calculations for a single and multiple subarea. WMS can perform a complete analysis for a watershed. Hydrocalc does not perform routing of hydrographs. WMS performs routing of hydrographs. Hydrocalc can be used for areas of 40 acres or less. WMS can perform hydrology analysis for any size of watershed. Hydrocalc, the parameters need to be predetermined. WMS generates those parameters for the model to run. Hydrocalc, the outputs are as a PDF or a CSV file, and for WMS as a text file. Hydrocalc, it's free, can be downloaded from our website, and WMS, the vendor is Aquaveo. And this concludes our presentation for today, and we're open for questions.
Okay, I have a question. So regarding the WMS program, is anyone able to use it, or just folks in stormwater engineering hydrology section? Like, can we use it if we wanted to try it?
I think they have a free version of Aquaveo that you can download, but for now, I think only hydrology is the ones that use it. We have licenses with them.
I think there's a fixed number of licenses.
Yeah.
So although you could get it installed on computers,
only so many people can use it at a time, right?
Yeah, you also gotta probably get our blessing, you know. Like Martin's or Roger. You guys, know.
So this software that you guys use when we request for hydrology study?
Yes.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one we use.
We do a lot of our work in GIS though. So, like they were saying, like a lot of the office prep work is done in GIS. Maybe we spend like 80% of the time in GIS, and then at the very end of the project, we'll take the files, we'll transfer it over to WMS. We'll bring it in, and then we'll just basically map everything at run, and then it'll run modified graphical method on the whole watershed. produce an output. Technically speaking, I guess design could use it if they wanted to. Such a small amount of time spent actually in the VMS. Yeah, not my call.
How long does it take on average
Yeah,
to
I
produce
think
one?
so.
I mean, I know it probably depends on the size of the area you're looking at, but is it a fairly lengthy process for
Like to
weeks
do a
and weeks and
hydraulic,
weeks to produce one of
You
these?
mean
or-
to run the model or to?
to do a complete hydrology study?
complete
Correct, yeah.
study?
I'm just out of curiosity.
How long did it take you to do
I forgot what size
Aliso.
Aliso is. That's taken me maybe 3-4 months now. It's a relatively large area. It's just some of the northern part of that area was, our data wasn't current, so we didn't have current
Yeah.
drainage plans, and so you kind of have to go between Navigate LA and what we have in our GIS, and then any discrepancies you have to go out in the field, and then there's a couple factors. You can't just do from your desk.
It takes a lot longer too because of the urban area.
So urban it takes longer.
Urban takes a lot longer.
Okay.
We will literally, like, street view, we'll go down each street and make
Every
sure
single
that all
intersection.
catch basins are on what we have on GIS and make note if it's not, and kind of take that into consideration when we break up the areas,
Okay.
so.
And you guys normally take your data when it is raining. I remember like after you guys give us a hydrology, when we try to do our design, we go out to the field. That is when you look at the flow pattern, right?
When it's raining?
When it is raining, right?
Well, that's ideal, but it's not always
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
not always, but it doesn't rain. But I know that's that is how we normally do it in those days. You go out there, you look at the flow pattern, like you're
Yes, we
saying,
do.
make sure
It's a
that-
lot easier, obviously, yes.
Yeah.
We also
We
took
don't
a
even have-
carpenter's level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
the
yeah.
flow level, right?
Yeah.
And then some data from the survey.
Like a little 2-liter. You know?
Yeah, if it's raining, it's a lot easier because we don't even have to get off of the car. We can just see,
Exactly.
oh,
Yeah,
the water is going
exactly.
down.
But this is running all the year.
I wish.
Question like that.
Is that hydrocalc different from the old TC volume calculations, or is just an improvement of?
It's an improvement.
Yeah,
It's an
it is an
improvement.
updated, it's an
An update.
improvement of the TC calc, and
Okay.
TC calculator.
Because I tried to download it, I can't run it on my computer. Do I need ITD?
So which
No,
one
you
is-
can download
Which
it.
one, the TC calc, the hydro?
Oh, the hydrocalc.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's really. Yeah, let us know because it's really free downloadable. If not, they get in touch with the chief so he can help you.
Okay.
That's okay with that.
Also,
Actually, he designed the hydro calc, so he just it's an update.
so
Yeah, I couldn't run it.
ITD, they really lock down our computers for the, what is it, programs files directory. So if you want to install it, if you install it in any directory outside of that programs file, it'll work. So if you installed it on C drive, if you installed it in your, I don't know,
Desktop.
Yeah, it will really work.
it'll work.
Yeah, so in other words, like, it defaults to like the program C drive folder, like program 86 or something. You just have to
Yeah.
get outside of that
Yep.
folder and it'll go.
Yeah, I'll talk to the chief.
Okay,
I
yeah.
cannot run it.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Oh, is that a maximum, like multiple, you have like a multiple sub area? Is that a maximum number for the hydrocal? You say multiple, I don't know, like, is that a maximum number?
I don't think so. I mean, I haven't tried running like hundreds or anything like that, but I think it can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, because it only takes like, I don't know, like a quarter second, fraction of a second to run one, so.
It's just the time to input into the CBS file.
Yeah, I don't know.
But, and then everything will connect it together to.
Oh, so multiple, so it's a
Both
batch
tables.
Okay.
single sub area.
I
It's
see.
Like tool. It doesn't do routing.
So only the WMS do the routing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like if you have a section with different types of soils type, but it's the same sub area, then that's where you can divide up into multiple, right? Like if it's different, like if you have a impervious, more impervious, and one less, would you split it up, or what
Do
would
the
you do
average.
in that case?
So there's differing like land use type.
Mhm, land use
and-
type.
And soil type inside
Mhm.
a single sub area.
Yeah.
That you've actually got, okay, so you'd have to calculate that yourself manually
Yeah.
before you input it, and before you, okay, so for soil type, for a sub area, it's the predominant soil type.
Yeah.
So you gotta kind of eyeball it, like, all right, that's like 60% of this soil,
Sure.
40
Yeah.
that, so we'll go with the 60. For land use, it's an area weighted average. So you gotta take, you know, if it's like 20 acres of single family residential and that's 42%, you kind of gotta, you know, remember that it's 20 acres times 0.42 plus a little, that's the benefit of having WMS.
Yeah.
It kind of automatically does all that for you. Yeah, not a big deal though. You could do all this in GIS too.
So how much does the WMS program cost?
Oh,
It's
you
very
remember?
expensive. I think
Yeah,
it's close
couple
to
grand.
maybe the full this is maybe I think close to 7,000 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
10 to 12.
Oh.
So can we all get out?
the full?
Yeah.
Version, yeah, the full, yeah.
Yeah, we tried to actually see if we can get more,
Michael Baker for the Dominican project.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, more licenses, but the problem is there really a need for all these licenses? Because it's a floating license, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
first
yeah.
come on, so I think SWED has 5 or 6.
I think 6.
Six.
Yeah.
And we use those 6 as well. If the department starts headed in that we use this, what's wrong?
Wait, what? Oh, so we're talking about the WMS?
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys have it? You guys have
They
WMS?
use the same
Yeah.
license.
Yeah, we use it.
Oh, so you, okay, I see what you're
So I go.
You guys
through-
aren't using it already though, right?
Yeah, we are.
Oh.
We're not using it like every day.
That's why
They're
they're
not
not
at the same time as
So
you.
I think Tan and Shirley,
No, that different program. That's XP Swim.
XP
Oh,
Swim.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is
But WMS we are, but you guys are, you're aware of it. We've used it. We use the one that SWED has their licenses on.
Yep.
Yeah, we have XP Swim for hydraulic stuff.
Yeah.
But we also have WMS.
Yeah.
So you made hydrocalc, so you could just make another WMS, right? That's right.
Are you working
I
on
would
it?
ask for out of class pay.
Denied.
Yeah, it was significant effort, a couple months.
Yeah, no, okay.
So how much do you guys charge to do a small hydrology study? Let's say 10 acres urban area. I want to put some drain about 2,000
For
feet or
free.
so.
Pretty- 10 acres is pretty small.
Pretty small.
You could probably do it in like a day, half a day.
So we're looking at about 1,000 or 2.
I'll do it for $1 or $2. But yeah, it's pretty cheap. Like it'll take a day's work.
Well, that's why I'm going to put it on PET, basically. $1.
Was that?
Any more questions? All right. All right, thank you.